color. It is so beautiful, it's so intriguing, and quite honestly, sometimes it's confusing and frustrating, and that's why it's important to get familiar with your palette. In this first part, we're going to talk about many differences even within the same color family. Things like values and color temperature, opacity, if you are an oil painter that especially applies, chroma, staining strength, viscosity. It's also important to know that different manufacturers, even with the same color name, there are differences there. And then pigments have varying degrees of graininess. I have found it very helpful to make a color chart, even a color chart for one color family. So I'm creating one for blue. However, I'm adding purple in too. These are the blues that are in my palette that I typically use, some of them more than others. Cerulean blue and cobalt blue I don't use as much. Phthalo blue and ultramarine blue I use quite a bit, and also I'm adding in dioxazine purple. I've made a grid, and you can see across the top I've put the name of the color, and I'll be doing some mixing with titanium white. Starting with the color 100% out of the tube, then I'm going to be adding more and more white in order to create the very lightest tint that I can get for that particular color. You may be wondering what type of paper I'm using for this. I'm using just canvas paper, and I've marked out my grid on top of it. Well, my cerulean is just about done here, and I'm starting on cobalt. You can tell a lot more about some of the color characteristics, especially color temperature and that type of thing, as you start to add in some of the titanium white. Also, some of my colors, many of my colors, are either transparent or semi-transparent, which I really enjoy working with. And of course, white, the titanium white, is opaque. So I am adding opacity to my colors now. Also, as I mix my colors, I am losing a little bit of the chroma or the intensity of that color with every bit of mixing that I do. You can really start to see now how different my blues are from one another. Even though blue is a cool color, some of my blues are warmer than others, some of my blues are cooler than others. And now we're looking at purple. Look how dark it is right out of the tube. It is one of the very darkest colors right out of the tube, but it gets very nice and light as we get the tint made. It can be really hard to see the color temperature, especially before you've added any white in, but you might want to go to the manufacturer and see what they say about their color temperature. They'll also have some information for you about how opaque or transparent their color is. Value is very important. So I've gone through with a value scale and tried to assign a value for each of my squares. It's extremely important with color to squint as you are trying to determine value. I've also made notes for myself about things I observed as I was mixing the colors. Things like staining strength and value and warmth, coolness, that type of thing. To really get to know your palette and feel comfortable with it, experiment. Make color charts for every color family. Experiment by mixing with white for different values, and as we get into another part of this, we'll mix with other colors. Look for temperature, look for chroma. All of these explorations will give you more detailed understanding about the colors you're using on your palette. I have more tips for you on painting and drawing at HelenCReedArt.com.